Hello, welcome to our winter webinar series by CARS. My name is Brenda Suggett, and I am the Executive Director of the Canadian Association of Road Safety Professionals. And I am happy today to be the moderator of a webinar entitled Tools and Strategies for Educating the Public about Autonomous and Semi-Autonomous Vehicles. And today we have two speakers. We have Hannah Barrett, who is from the Traffic Injury Research Foundation, and she is their research and program coordinator. We also have Tara Adrinja, who is with the Partners for Automated Vehicle Education, or PAVE, and they will both be speaking one after the other. Hannah will go first, and then Tara, and the questions will be left until the end. And in terms of how to provide your questions, you'll notice that at the bottom of your screen is a Q&A feature. So we ask that you submit the questions through that and not through the chat feature. And you can submit them at any time during the webinar, but they will be asked at the end. So without further ado, I will be now introducing the two speakers. So once again, Hannah Barrett is a research and program coordinator at the Traffic Injury Research Foundation. She has a master's degree in criminology and criminal justice policy from the University of Guelph. Hannah's research includes work on alcohol ignition interlocks, alcohol impaired driving, safe rides, and wildlife vehicle collisions. Hannah has been actively involved in TIRF's technical assistance on alcohol ignition interlocks and impaired driving countermeasures through the cooperative agreement with NHTSA. Tara Adrinja is the Executive Director of Partners for Automated Vehicle Education, or PAVE, which is a nonprofit coalition focused on engaging with the public about automated vehicles and their potential to improve the safety, mobility, and sustainability of our transportation system. Ms. Adrinja has led the group since its public launch in January of 2019. Ms. Adrinja has more than 25 years of experience in communications, policy, and coalition management. Prior to joining PAVE, she spent 2 decades as a communications director in the United States Senate, managing public relations for a US Senate office and several Senate committees, including the Senate Auto Caucus. She received her BA in political science from the University of Pennsylvania. And now I'd like to welcome Hannah, who will be presenting first.
Thanks, Brenda. So today I'm going to be presenting on tools and strategies for educating the public about autonomous vehicles. So just to briefly give an overview about TIRF for those of you who haven't heard, TIRF is Canada's Road Safety Research Institute. It's a world leader in research, program and policy development, evaluation, and knowledge transfer. We focus on the people that use our roads and behaviors that result in driver error, which account for more than 90% of road crashes. We are established as a registered charity and are an independent road safety research institute governed by a board of directors representing the public and private sectors in Canada. We're funded through grants and contracts that are marked for specific projects and sustained donations to provide services to public and private sectors. We have a wide variety of staff, including criminologists like myself, psychologists, data scientists, and sociologists. So the issue of public education is not new. For the past 2 decades, vehicle manufacturers have made concerted efforts to help drivers keep pace with the substantial changes in vehicle technology as rapid advances have been achieved. So this is just an overview of what I'm going to discuss today. So some of you may be familiar with Bring On Board. It was launched in 2013 with funding from the Toyota Canada Foundation, and it's a public education program to engage Canadians to learn more about modern vehicle safety features, dispelling myths about how they work, and reminding drivers that knowing more about their vehicle safety technology will help them to be safer drivers. The primary focus of Brain on Board is to educate drivers about the effectiveness of ADAS features and ways to maximize protection. It shares facts about vehicle safety features, advanced driver assistance systems, the importance of safe driving habits, and myths and misconceptions about technologies. The website is comprised of 4 primary sections: safety features, human factors, myths and misconceptions, and program resources. It contains a variety of user-friendly tools, including radio public service announcements, informative posters, fact sheets, as well as question and answer pages. And despite technological advantages and promising test results, knowledge gaps still exist between those who design safety features and consumers who purchase and use new vehicles. Many Canadians do not fully understand what these new safety systems are designed to do and how they are designed to do it. Explanations in owner's manuals may sometimes be unclear, and car buyers do not always seek or receive adequate explanations of how their safety features work upon buying a new vehicle. So this gap was the primary focus in the creation of Brain on Board. Drivers underestimate their role in the safety equation. Less than 1/3 of Canadian drivers are familiar with common vehicle safety features. A public opinion poll was developed and conducted by us at TURF, containing 120 items designed to explore a range of issues relating to vehicle safety features and driving habits. The majority of questions use a scale from 1 to 6, where 6 indicated high agreement and 1 indicated low agreement. And we had a total of 2,506 Canadians complete the poll. Overall, the results showed that people aren't sure what features they have or how they work, but they think they work better than technology. More concerning, they're willing to take risks because they believe the vehicles are safer. There's an inherent contradiction here, which highlights the need for education. The curriculum was therefore created based on these results and is designed to inspire users to think about driving and the safety features. We really highlight that your brain is the most important safety feature. So as I previously mentioned, safety features is one of the key topics included on Brain on Board, and this section contains information about a wide range of vehicle safety features currently on the market, as well as safety technologies that are currently in development. Information is provided in a question and answer style and covers a range of safety feature topics as listed here, such as passive safety features, driver's assistance technology, and safety technology and development. And the poster you see on your screen on the slide, this is one of our posters shared online to just highlight that your brain needs to work in order for the car to do its job. Human factors, also referred to as ergonomics, examines people's behavior and the way they interact with various aspects of the world. The purpose of human factors research is to reduce risky behaviors and make these interactions safer, healthier, and more efficient. Human factors are not necessarily limited to unsafe driving behaviors such as excessive speeding or tailgating. Age, driving experience, attention level, and vehicle maintenance can all have an effect downstream on the performance of safety features. Drivers are an indispensable part of the road safety system, so factors that affect drivers accordingly affect road safety in general. And this is just an example of what the website looks like. So if you were to click on human factors and then click on senior drivers, this is what would pop up. So it's all Q&A style, and each topic contains a definition of the factor, how the factor affects traffic safety, how the factor affects safety features, and the prevalence. There's also, if you were to scroll down on the website, there would also be PSAs and posters available to go that sum up everything that's on the website. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about automated vehicles. So in 2016, TURF explored driver knowledge, attitudes, and practices regarding semi and fully automated vehicles, again with funding from the Toyota Canada Foundation. The primary focus of the study was on limited self-driving semi-automated vehicles, or LSDVs, and fully automated self-driving vehicles, or FSDVs. It also explored technology acceptance, trust in automation, and behavioral adaptation. So for the key findings, we found that driver confidence in technology to perform safely in high-risk situations was quite low. Majority of Canadians did not agree that LSDVs will perform better than drivers. Just 16% of drivers strongly agreed that SDVs would make them better drivers, and only 24% strongly agreed that LSDVs would respond better to pedestrians and cyclists and hazards. Of concern, focus group results suggested that Canadians would most want to rely on automated technology in these high-risk conditions, including poor driving conditions such as weather, opposed to relying on their own skill and experience. 16% of Canadians strongly agreed that it would be unnecessary to pay attention to the road environment when using the self-driving feature of an LSDV. Drivers that were most likely to be inattentive were younger and drove longer distances. And here in the graph on the slide, you can see that there's a concerning proportion of drivers who reported that they would be willing to drive tired or fatigued, engage in a non-driving activity, sleep or nap, and drink and drive. So despite these negative responses, we do also see that the vast majority at 77% did indicate that they would continue to watch the road. However, 1/5 of drivers reported that they would disengage the self-driving feature to drive faster in poor roads and weather conditions, and 14% would disengage self-driving features to run a red light under similar conditions. So in light of these results, education is essential to prepare drivers for automated vehicles. Misconceptions exist regarding the role in driver education and response times to warnings, and technology limitations are vastly underestimated. TURF conducted another survey in 2018 with funding from the Toyota Canada Foundation, and we took a closer look at older drivers in automated vehicles. All participants in this study were licensed drivers over the age of 65 with a mean age of 73 years. The key findings of this study showed that seniors are more risk averse and they're more aware of what they don't know, but they do have a willingness to learn. So here there is an opportunity to increase safety conditional on the availability of education for senior drivers. The participants reported that they would prefer a hands-on context, a classroom environment, or an online learning forum to best suit the learning about LSDVs. Many participants also expressed the desire to have practical experience with LSDVs, such as a simulator. So automated vehicles have tremendous potential to improve road safety. However, the extent to which reductions in fatalities and injuries are achieved in the real world will ultimately depend on the knowledge drivers have about using the technology safely, as well as its limitations. TURF has partnered with Desjardins to help fill this gap. A series of educational fact sheets answering important questions about automated vehicles was designed to inform educational efforts by many organizations and educational institutions. They were created based on the findings from the previously mentioned national surveys exploring the knowledge, attitudes, and practices of Canadians with respect to advanced driver assistance systems, as well as semi and fully automated vehicles. These fact sheets were developed using research and working with the global automakers, as well as the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety to help explain some of the technical nuances and engineering issues, as well as the latest research on these topics. Additionally, TURF has participated in Transport Canada's AV Cybersecurity Working Group to further develop the curriculum. So all the topics on the AV curriculum are available in the form of PSAs, posters, fact sheets, flashcards, and publications, as well as the previously mentioned Q&A style. So just for an overview of the topics available, an overview of the AV technology shares common principles of automated vehicle technology to help provide context for drivers, such as the different levels of automation, automated driving, technological limitations and failure rates, and semi-automated vehicles. The handover principle describes the benefit of automated vehicles for drivers, which will depend on their knowledge and understanding of the functionality, specifically the limitations of the self-driving option and how vehicle control will be handed over to drivers when prompted, or how drivers may choose to retake control of their vehicle. Myths and misconceptions contains a concerted effort to dispel myths or misconceptions drivers may have about the capabilities of the technology and increase understanding of limitations associated with it, as this can positively shape driver behavior and promote safety. In light of this, important topics regarding the use of automated vehicles, specifically common beliefs and misperceptions about the technology. So for example, some of the myths addressed are whether or not you can nap while you're driving, if that the features will kick in automatically, and just the level of work required by the driver. So the issue of automated vehicles continues to evolve as more research is conducted and more real-world experience from pilot testing vehicles is gained. Ultimately, our experiences and success with the rollout of automated vehicles will be defined in part by how well we prepare road users to interact with these vehicles safely. There's been a lot of work done already, but there's still much more to do, as education is crucial in preparing drivers for automated vehicles. So TURF and several other partners are pleased to be working with PAVE to support their efforts, and Tara will describe more of who PAVE are and what they do during her presentation. So that's it for me, and I'm going to pass it over to Tara. And my slide deck will be available later, but Brain on Board is how you'll be able to access the AV curriculum, which is currently not live. It will be live by the end of this week. So if you're interested, check out Brain on Board and you'll be able to see the curriculum there.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Hannah. And now I'm going to pass it over to Tara. Tara, you're muted.
You would think 2 years into this, we would have the Zoom thing down. Thank you so much. My name is Tara Andringa, and I'm the Executive Director of PAVE and PAVE Canada, which is we just launched. And we are super excited to work with TURF and other organizations in this public education effort. I will talk a little bit about our particular campaign to engage with the public on automated vehicles as well. So this is just the mission of PAVE, which is that we conduct a public education campaign to try to help create an autonomous future that increases safety, mobility, equity, and sustainability. PAVE is a nonprofit coalition, like I said, that seeks to raise the level of public understanding and trust of automated vehicles. We have a really diverse membership. It's a lot of groups from industry, from nonprofits, other consumer advocacy groups. We also have 2 advisory councils. One is an academic advisory council and one is a public sector advisory council, who are other experts in the AV ecosystem who assist us in our messaging and our mission as well. Just wanted to talk a little bit about how our group got started and where it came from. It really was a truly grassroots effort that groups from all those different sectors, from the industry, from public sector and academia and nonprofit safety groups, all started having this conversation about this great need to educate consumers about autonomous vehicles. We knew that some groups were making disparate efforts, but really thought that the effort would be much stronger if all of these stakeholders came together in a united effort. So we launched PAVE at the CES conference in Las Vegas in January of 2019, and we've grown a lot. So we had 19 members in January 19, and we have about 90 now. So we've quadrupled in size, which I really think shows the widespread belief that this really is a important effort. These are PAVE's members across the US and Canada, and I know that's tiny print, so I don't expect you to be able to see them all, but the point that I like to make here is the diversity of our membership. They're obviously the household names that you recognize, Ford, GM, Toyota, Volkswagen, but the ones that I like to point out that I really are equally critical to our effort are groups like the National Federation of the Blind and United Spinal, which is a group representing wheelchair users, and Mothers Against Drunk Driving, these groups who also see the immense benefits for their constituencies in new mobility options. And it's really part of our core, one of the biggest misperceptions we face with our group is people thinking that we're an industry mouthpiece or an industry group. And while industry is a critical part of our membership, these advocacy groups and safety groups are the National Safety Council here in the US is another one I should point out. But it really is critical part of our conversation with the public. But so then the next obvious question is, okay, so that you have these very, very, very diverse stakeholders, and I will admit that sometimes parts of my job feel like, herding cats, but so what brings us all together? And it's really two critical beliefs. First of all, our members all believe that autonomous vehicles have the potential to improve the safety, mobility, equity, sustainability, efficiency, I could go on and on, of our transportation system. That's belief number one. And then belief number two is that public acceptance is also critical. And I really here like to underscore the word potential. We all believe that autonomous vehicles have this potential, but that it doesn't happen automatically. That if we just, unleash autonomous vehicles on the street, if the public isn't accepting, if the public doesn't understand the technology, if the public doesn't trust the technology, and if we're not thoughtful. And then again, I want to keep going back to the point I mentioned about the breadth of our coalition. We need all these voices on board. These decisions cannot be made in boardrooms alone. That we really need all of these voices and all of these stakeholders to come together in this united effort and talk to the public and educate the public and raise public understanding and trust in order for this technology to reach its potential. So then the question is, where is public understanding now? And Hannah did an amazing job of talking about some of this, but kind of echoing the same point. We've now conducted two polls. This is actually our first one. I need to update this to be the 2021 poll. But in 2020, we conducted a poll and 48% of people, this was in the US, said they would never get into a self-driving taxi or rideshare. So it showed that there's a lot of trust needed to be built if this technology is going to be successful. The good news, however, is that if the same poll found that greater knowledge and more exposure to the technology are the two things that change people's attitudes. So about 60% said they would trust AVs if they understood the technology, and almost 60% said they would trust them more if they could actually experience the technology. So that's good news. And that's sort of what PAVE does, is the two things we really focus on are trying to raise the level of knowledge and give people exposure to the technology. Actually, I'm going to tell, this isn't in my official presentation, but one quick story I want to tell. Prior to the pandemic, one of the big things we did was give demonstration events. So we would have the public come, we would go to a city, have the public come and could ride in an autonomous vehicle. And we always joked that usually when you give people an experience like that, you want them to get out and think it was the most exciting thing ever. But we would laugh that we always considered, frankly, the most successful rides were when people got out and said, that was kind of boring. I felt just like I was riding in a car. And the way we look at it is that's one person at a time. When people experience the technology and say, it stopped when it was supposed to stop, it made cautious decisions. It felt just like driving with the human being. That's building trust. And, it's one person at a time and it's a long effort, but we really do see a difference in when people experience the technology, that their level of understanding really grows. So then that's what we get to what we do. So we have a conversation with the public, and obviously the word education is in our name, and I really do think education is critical. But I honestly look at it more like we're having a conversation with society, because it's not like anyone has all the answers and we're I don't like to think of it as we're talking down to people. I think people's questions and people's fears are real. And nobody has all the answers. There are questions about kind of the rollout of this technology. No one knows what it'll look like. And that's why we really believe we need to have this thoughtful, informed conversation. So what we are trying to do is give people the facts and knowledge that they need to be part of this conversation. How we see it is a lot of people aren't well served by the current transportation system, either because cars are unaffordable, or they have a cognitive or physical disability that renders driving impossible. And we want to ensure that the new transportation system we're creating serves more people better. And so what we are wanting to do, we see every single person as a stakeholder in the transportation system, whether it's a driver, a pedestrian, or a passenger, or a bicyclist, or whatever it is. We want everyone to be able to be part of this conversation. So we are trying to empower people to have the knowledge they need to do so. And then as the slide said, we also try to demystify the technology. And that doesn't mean that every person is going to have an engineer level sophistication of precisely how autonomous car works. But I think just kind of explaining to people sensors and systems, and we frequently talk about it like a human senses, like we use our eyesight and smell and taste and touch and hearing to navigate the world. And all of these senses together enable us to see the world and experience the world. Similarly, we explained that a self-driving car has radar and LiDAR and cameras and all these different technologies that together let it navigate the world. And so we really try to, again, demystify the mystique of a self-driving car. So how we do it. And these are just the three really big buckets of what PAVE does. We have a messaging and media effort, which is, website, social media, traditional media, news engagement, events, like I mentioned, the demonstration events and conferences and different things. And we also do public sector engagement. And here I like to be really careful because we do not lobby. Some people see that and think, oh, you're trying to push something. And in fact, it's in our bylaws that we do not lobby. We're policy neutral. And how I'd like to explain that is we do not think of ourselves as coming into a city or a community or a country and saying, this is the policy you should adopt. However, what we see particularly with local communities is a lot of communities say we want to help our communities prepare for an AV future, but we don't even know where to begin. We don't have the facts and knowledge we need about the technology to make the best choices for our community. So that's what we are trying to do, is give public sector officials and it's questions we get frequently about, like, how does an autonomous vehicle interact with law enforcement or with first responders? How would they get into a car that's locked? What about infrastructure? Are there specific infrastructure needs that autonomous vehicle technology requires? So that kind of information we try to provide to communities so that they have the facts that they need to make the best choices for their constituents. Anyway, we do lots and lots of activities. It's hard. We can't possibly put them on a slide. And I know this is a lot of words, but these are just some of the things we do. We hold weekly educational panels, online virtual panels. We've had more than 16,000 registrants in the last, not even 2 years yet, an additional 20,000 views of our panels on the website. Actually, we are very excited. We just won a national in the US, a National Communications Award for public education for our panel series. Like I said, we have demonstration events, we do policymaker education, we have a very active social media online presence. I mentioned we've held 2 public opinion polls in the US, and we are going to do one in Canada, which I will get to in just one second. We've done some public sector engagement with the US Department of Transportation, particularly about inclusive design and inclusive mobility. We've had a lot of speakers at panels, and we have a podcast too called the PAVEcast that we discuss lots of topics about AVs. So okay, so that's what we have done in the US. So what we started hearing from our members is they wanted to be part of PAVE, but really felt like we needed to start doing more focused activities in Canada. That they said there was obviously a similar need. This need for AV education is global, but really wanted to be able to engage with local governments there and do events in Canada. And so we got together several of our members who had a large Canadian presence, or several that are based in Canada, and started talking to them about this idea of kind of creating a chapter of PAVE in Canada. So these are the founding members, the first companies that came aboard onto PAVE Canada. And we applied for a highway safety grant through Transport Canada, and we were so honored and excited to be granted this funding to create PAVE Canada. And what we wanted to do is take the lessons that we had learned from the US efforts and kind of the best practices and the most successful activities that we had done, and start this same conversation with the Canadian public. Our grant has 4 phases. So first is the launch of PAVE Canada, which we just did 2 weeks earlier this month in February. The second phase is to run a public survey to identify where the gaps in knowledge are, to really ask people what their understanding is of technology, both technology on the roads today and in future technologies that are not currently commercially available. Once we find what those gaps are, to run an education campaign, a social media campaign, really addressing the gaps, like trying to convey facts about where we had seen the confusion, and then finally a report. Like I said, we launched early in February. These are just some of the news stories that we got from our launch, and some of this was part of our social media campaign. And we are very excited. We are now moving on to, I just had a call an hour ago with JD Power of Canada is doing the survey for us. So we're actively working on that, and then excited to move forward with the social media campaign next. So super excited to talk to this group. We are really trying to reach out and just engage as many people there in this space as we can. Like I've said, we are huge believers in having lots and lots of voices involved in this conversation. I think the more voices and the more diverse voices we have, the more successful it will be. So that is our initiative. This is my email address. If anyone ever has any comments or suggestions or would like to reach out to me, our website is pavecampaign.ca, and on almost every social media platform, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, everywhere, our handle is at PAVE Campaign. But really appreciate your time today and excited for our conversation.
Thank you very much, Tara. We really appreciate that presentation, and congratulations on opening a Canada chapter of PAVE, and for giving us that background on how your organization started up and the important work that you're doing. I also want to thank Hannah for her very informative presentation about the resources that you have to teach people about autonomous as well as semi-autonomous vehicles and various advanced vehicle technologies, and also about the research that you're doing. And I'm now going to open it up to the question and answer portion of our webinar, and we're actually in good time right now, so we've got a good amount of time, a little less than half an hour to ask questions. So please keep them coming in. If you can use, once again, the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen and submit your questions there, that would be great. And I'm going to start off with a question from Robert Townsley. And I'm not, this could really be devoted to either one of you. What level of autonomy, or I guess, sorry, this is for Tara. What level of autonomy is PAVE working to educate the public on? Fully autonomous vehicles like the Tesla, level 2, 3 automation, or just level 1 AEB, ACC, etc.?
That is an excellent question, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a long answer because this has been a really topic that we have thought a lot about. So when the idea for PAVE came up, as I said, it was some folks from industry and academia and government, and what we did is, this was in 2018, so before PAVE launched, we just got together. We all sat around a conference table and just started talking about, is there an appetite for this sort of effort and for this kind of nonprofit? And that was one of the main topics of conversation, is what are we looking to educate about? And I think the initial idea was that a lot of these companies thought that we needed to educate about future technologies, about levels 4 and 5. But then the more we talked about it, we realized if what we're trying to do is educate the public, and realizing that the public doesn't understand what's on the roads today, as Hannah talked about, people don't even understand what's in current vehicles. And then I will underscore, equally importantly, people don't understand what is not on the roads today. It's sort of shocking how many people, if you say, can you buy a self-driving car today? A lot of people answer yes. And the answer is no. Unequivocally, any car today you buy requires an attentive human driver at the wheel. Even if they can do incredibly fancy things and sophisticated technologies and brake themselves and switch lanes themselves, they all require a human driver. And a lot of people don't understand that. So what we realized is, in order to talk about future technologies, you really have to start from zero. You have to explain to people what exists today, what does not exist today, and what future technologies can likely do. And then I want to add one other, what I think is an important point. We do not believe we're ever going to get to the point, nor is that even a goal, for people to be able to refer to I think SAE levels are critical, and it's a great system for industry to be able to talk about technologies and capabilities. We are never going to get to the point, again, nor are we trying to get there, to have people on the street being able to say, you know, a Tesla's a level 2 car. So what we think is really important is to talk about what the human role is. And as I said, for people to understand, any car you buy today, no matter how cool it is, requires a driver, an attentive driver. Level 4 cars, you know, which a lot of our members are working on, you know, Waymo in Chandler, Arizona has cars that do not require a human at the wheel. But for people to understand that critical safety distinction of the human role is really what we are focused on. So that's a long answer to your question. But so we do talk about, you know, all different levels of technology, but yeah, so, but with the critical piece of what the human role is.
Okay, thank you very much. We also have another question. This one is from Piero Hirsch, and he asks, I understand that AV technology cannot detect pedestrians hidden behind parked vehicles. So if one suddenly emerges, there is a real risk of collision. Please comment. So I'll open that to either one of you. Oh, you're muted.
Keep doing this. I am not an engineer, so I don't want to give an overly technical answer. You know, actually what I think are fantastic though, I've almost seen a lot of evidence from our members of PAVE who show videos that almost suggest the opposite, that because the technology can see 360 degrees, and like the example that it's actually a cruise video that I've seen several times that shows a cruise vehicle coming up behind, say there's a delivery truck parked in the roadway, and you need to the car needs to, you know, get around the delivery truck in order to keep going forward. You know, human drivers have to keep doing that, like inch out and peek out and kind of, you know, hope to God that no, there's no car coming at you. Whereas, you know, AV technology can see through the car, that they can actually, you know, see 360 degrees and know, in fact, if there's a car around the corner getting ready to come. So I always think that that's an instance where the technology is actually better than human capabilities. I'm sure you have a specific incident that I may not be familiar with, but yeah, I would love to defer to, you know, a member and check on that for you. I don't have a super technical answer.
Okay, thank you for that. We have another question. This one is from Brian Jonah. And he asks, will AVs have on-off switches so that the driver can choose automatic or manual operation? If so, will some drivers choose to leave the vehicle in manual operation all or most of the time? And if they do, AVs and manually operated vehicles will interact with the roads for a long time. Will this pose a safety problem? So I'll put that out to both of you, whoever would like to respond.
Hannah, feel free to jump in anytime. I don't want to dominate this, but and I'm not going to give much of a helpful answer. I think, you know, a lot of these really technical questions we just don't know yet. As of right now, certainly any autonomous vehicle can be put in manual mode, and that's what test drivers do, is whenever they are not certain about how a car is going to navigate a situation, they will put it into manual mode and the driver will take over. One of my favorite quotes along this line was from the company Aurora. I heard one of their founders speak a few years ago. And what he explained was, whenever they do that, whenever the driver takes over and puts it in manual mode, they have the computer continue, because what they like to test is, had the car continued on the situation itself, would it have handled it safely? So this is a situation where the human says, I'm not sure the car's going to know what to do. I will do it. But we're curious to see what the car would have done had I not done that. And he said, and someone said, have you ever seen an instance where the car wouldn't have handled it safely. And he said, not only have we not, but he said in most instances, the car would have handled it better just because the reaction time of the computer is that much faster, which I thought was fascinating. Yeah, I don't know, certainly cars are being tested that have no steering wheel. So I think there'll be, it's a hard question to kind of answer yes or no. But I think your question about manual operated vehicles and autonomous vehicles interacting is a very real question and concern, and something that there's a lot of people studying now. But Hannah, go ahead.
I was going to say something similar, just that certainly, some do, some don't. You have the option to hand over and to do the manual versus autonomous. And like Tara, I don't know like this true logistics. Like I'm also not an engineer, so it's hard to say. I think that's something that we'll have to continue researching and looking at the impact, and then continue to educate moving forward. It's going to be a learning process for quite some time, and we're going to see how things go and continue to look into that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I've got another question. This is also from Robert Townsley. He says, looking into the future, I see vehicles going fully autonomous eventually. In my opinion, I only see it being 100% effective when all vehicles are autonomous and can predict what other vehicles are doing and or communicate with other vehicles. Are you of the same opinion, or do you think autonomous vehicles can function on the same roads as non-AV vehicles? And if so, what timeline do you foresee for that time period, 20, 30, 50 years, when it'll be all autonomous? I know that's got a lot of layers. So, and I'll pass that one to you, Tara, if you can answer that.
So I will say the timeline question is probably the most common question we get, and it's one that no one knows yet. Although I see there was actually a question right before Robert's, and I'm going to kind of combine these two. Similarly, the person in the question immediately before said that, autonomous vehicles are a long time away, 50 to 100 years away, for various reasons. What do we see as the advantages to support this technology? And so I'll kind of combine both these. I agree with both of you. We are a long time away from what I will call level 5 technology, if we ever get there. But then this is going to sound like a tricky answer, but I think it depends what you define autonomy as. Right now, we have lots of level 4 cars being tested. And you're right, the cars that can literally drive anywhere, who knows if we will ever get there. What we do see today and have today are cars that can operate in a limited domain, and that can be anywhere from, I'm being too casual as using the word cars, autonomous vehicles. So that can be, we have in mining, on college campuses, on hospital campuses, all these different areas where we're using autonomous vehicle technology. We have like shuttles here in the US, and I know you have some pilots in Canada as well. Like we have, shuttles on a college campus that take students that are autonomous within that operational design domain. And so, I think that there are a lot of ways that we can use this technology, or that like the company Nuro is doing, or there are several companies that are making delivery vehicles that are delivering pizzas and different things, which again is autonomous technology in construction, in agriculture. We are using lots of autonomous technology. So I think we really need to think broadly beyond just passenger vehicles. And then in terms of your question about the advantages, I think there are lots. And like I said in my presentation, that's part of what we really like to talk about, the use cases. For people who can't drive, for blind people, for people in wheelchairs, I had a dad that we lost to Alzheimer's. And if we had other mobility options for him, we had to take his keys away several years before he died. And that would be life-changing. And so that's the kind of place, we had a member that was their main place where they were deploying this technology were in senior communities, where again, it would just do a loop. And within that limited domain, they could pick up people, drop them off at where they needed to go. So I think that that's a huge example. I think there's also huge safety benefits. Hannah talked about that quite a bit in her presentation of autonomous vehicles. So yeah, I think that, there are lots and lots of use cases where we could see potential benefits. But Robert, then the second point of your question, which I think a prior question had asked too, about the complicated issue of autonomous vehicles and non-autonomous vehicles coexisting is, I don't want to say it's not possible, certainly, but yeah, it's a complicated issue that a lot of our members are working very, very hard to do testing of right now.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much, Tara. We'll just ask if people can keep the questions coming in. In the meantime, I do have a couple of questions myself, and I'm going to direct this one to Hannah. You had mentioned that you did some work looking at the beliefs and attitudes of seniors around AVs and semi-autonomous vehicles, and how they tended to be more risk averse than the general public. And you said that you would, looking at them and developing resources for them would be insightful to also guide public education for all ages. And I just wondered if you could comment on that, how studying seniors can also help you in terms of educational resources for all ages.
I think in terms of seniors, the demographic was chosen because if you had to be a licensed driver over the age of 65. So in theory, you've probably been driving a long time. So you have a lot of skill on the road. And by understanding what they understand, I guess, about the vehicles, I just think that can help influence how we teach everybody in knowing what these expert drivers understand, and understanding if they're willing to stop relying on themselves as much and let it go to the technology. What are their concerns as, experienced drivers in letting technology take over? Whereas someone who is young and new to driving is so, immersed in the actual technology and the newness of it. And, they're into Teslas and they follow the production, and they're not necessarily thinking about the skill required to drive in addition to understanding how the autonomous vehicles work. Whereas when you talk to seniors, they're understanding the skill, but perhaps not the technology, but they're able to discuss, their concerns with the technology and when to take over. So by understanding their concerns, we can further address the myths and misconceptions, like on the website, about what they understand versus don't understand, and further teach young people about that as well.
And just listening to both of you, in my mind, it seems like there's two sort of major areas of where we've got to educate the people. It's the technologies themselves and how they work and what their limitations are, and then there's the how they perceive them in terms of, can I rely on this? Can I, stop thinking myself, because I can sit back, and sometimes it can lead to a false sense of security if they think that it can do more than what it is maybe programmed to do. So I'm just wondering, for each of you, what you're doing in those two areas of education.
I think you hit on one of the most important things in this space, and that's, and Hannah kind of talked about this in her presentation too, but there's that very dangerous period where, as cars become more sophisticated, those cars have the potential to make our roads safer. ADAS technology really has huge safety benefits. The danger is, as people become more and more and more reliant on those technologies, and they think, oh, the car is so cool, it can drive itself, I don't need to pay attention anymore, that actually makes it less safe. And so that's this critical time where we're not yet to the point that the car can drive itself, but the car can really do sophisticated safety tasks teaching people that they need to remain engaged is hard. It's you're absolutely right. It's one of our biggest challenges.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think we're in an area where we don't have the fully autonomous, but that's sort of a misconception that widely exists, is that any level of automation is self-driving. And I think there's just a vast overestimation on what these cars can and cannot do. And that's something we learned specifically in the senior study. One of the first questions in one of the groups was to go around and ask, have you driven or do you own an autonomous vehicle? And one of the seniors raised their hand and said yes, because they have cruise control. And that was, just a misconception they had, that was autonomous, because once your cruise control is set, your car is going the same speed the entire time until you brake or push on the gas. And I mean, that's not autonomous, but that's just one of those misconceptions that's out there in misunderstanding the technology. And that's where the education piece is absolutely crucial, is dispelling those myths and telling people what it can actually do to make the road safer in turn.
Another, if it's okay, Brenda, I'd like to just mention another thing. Another place that we've seen an interesting kind of division in terms of age. Someone in one of the questions a little earlier, I think, made reference to, these cars, autonomous vehicle technology won't have any environmental benefit. And again, in my presentation, I really said I'd like to underscore the word potential, because this is another place where I think you're right. If what we create are autonomous vehicles that are the same model as we have now, that people own cars, that people drive cars, and all we do is increase vehicle miles traveled, obviously that's not going to create a environmental benefit. If, however, what we create is a system where it's more vehicles, mobility as a service, and fleets, and people aren't people are sharing vehicles, or it again has the potential to make our highway system more sustainable. But so when we've asked questions about this on surveys, that's one of those areas where we've seen a really fascinating difference between different ages. And even sort of personally, like, I kind of think, so I have 2 teenagers. My teenagers have subscriptions for everything. They, when I was growing up, you owned cassettes or owned, CDs or whatever it is. They have a music subscription. They have for kind of everything they need. So for them, the idea of, I get a subscription to a car and I pay this much, per month. And when I need a car, I get a car. And when I don't need a car, I don't, seems totally normal to them. Whereas when I look at, my mother, who's 80, she has always owned her own car. It's parked in her garage. She has, insurance on her car. And again, comes from the generation where you own your own music, you own your own everything. And so, but I think younger people are more, and that's my anecdotal experience, but we've also seen this in surveys that younger people tend to be more open to the concept of kind of fleets and sharing. So it's just another interesting place where we've seen stratification between generations.
Yeah, no, and I was thinking of that as you're both presenting, how it does vary amongst different generations and by age levels and so forth. And I just wondered how, like you looked at seniors, Hannah, and I'm wondering with you, with your survey that you're going to be doing, the running public survey to identify knowledge gaps, will you be looking for those particular differences between groups, and then from that information catering your education campaign, like targeting specific groups of the population, and also just what you said about their view of things like sharing rides? Will you be looking into that area as well, to sort of where this is going to go in the future and how it might help the climate? For sure.
So that's, the survey is pretty long, but so it looks at all these different issues. Yeah, it looks at age. There are a lot of ages. People react differently. People in urban areas versus more rural areas see the benefits very differently. There are a lot of certainly we'll look at these things. And then, like you said, a lot about age. Another thing that's really interesting is where people get their information from. Younger people tend to be more like they get their information from social media, older people from, more traditional media, TV, radio, whatever it is. So it's, yeah, we definitely look at targeted groups and then, consider the source or the best place to present the information.
Okay. Hannah, did you have anything to add to that in terms of how you might focus your resources on particular segments of the population and their own specific education needs?
To my knowledge, I don't believe TURF has specifically done a survey or study on young people in autonomous vehicles. I think we've just done the senior study and then like a public opinion. So, a wide variety of ages. However, on the AV curriculum, which I mentioned will be launched later this week, and as well as on the Brain on Board website, currently, we do have educational resources specifically for seniors and for young adults or young drivers. So we have already sort of categorically started this process, and we also use, social media, like Tara said, that's where young people mostly get it. It's, social media and blog posts, and that's where we're sort of putting our resources right now, is educating through there. So, I mean, I think doing a youth study would be particularly interesting, but I don't believe TURF has done anything like that yet.
Okay, well, we've had a few more questions come in, so I'll just dive right into them. Susan asks, if drivers become more reliant on ADAS features over time, how can we remind them to be less so? Like we were talking about that a bit earlier, if they, it's a bit of, safe, they're relying on it too much. It's hard enough to get people to see general road safety advertising. So I'll open that to either of you.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've hit the nail on the head that's the biggest challenge. Education is obviously what we are trying to do. One example, you kind of have to follow me here because I know you first hear this and your reaction is, okay, that's not the same, and it's not. And so I want to say this is not a perfect example or a perfect comparison. But in the United States in the 1980s, we had this campaign called Click It or Ticket, and the idea was it was to increase seatbelt usage. And it increased seatbelt usage up to 90%. And I, to be honest, I can't remember what it was very low to begin with. And it was this campaign, and it was an example where kind of like what PAVE's trying to do, it brought together industry and the government and to educate people to wear seatbelts. And it was a public education campaign focused on auto safety. Now, where it's hugely different is that's one concrete task. You're asking people, put on a seatbelt, and then there was a clear penalty. It's click it or ticket. You put on a seatbelt or you'll get a ticket. So that was much easier. But I think it's an example of where all these stakeholders came together, safety groups and academia and government and industry, and said, we have this auto safety issue. We need to address this. We need to educate the public. And they did a big widespread campaign, and it really was impactful. This issue is much more complicated, as we've been talking about for the last hour, but I think that's similar. And that's why what PAVE is trying to do is bring together all these stakeholders in a united education effort. And again, I'm not pretending this is easy. It's hard stuff, but that's, a similar goal.
Okay, great, thank you. And we had it just a comment that come in. While car shares have worked well within high density urban settings, the suburban rural population will be far more resistant regardless of age. I don't know if you had a comment, or if you disagree with that.
Yeah, I agree with it. And but one thing we really have been talking about is rural usage, because that's a really common and fair question is so people in cities get all these benefits. How can autonomous vehicle technology support rural users? And we like to think of it like food deserts. And actually the University of Iowa here in the US is doing a pilot right now where it's medical care for rural users who are with disabilities. And so they're piloting a autonomous vehicle to kind of do this. I think it's like a 15-mile loop. So it's a hard, question that I think people are really being creative, particularly like in academia, looking at different ways the technology can benefit, rural users. But you're right that it's a really different we really need to think creatively. It looks differently certainly than it does in urban centers.
Okay, well, our time is up, and I would like to thank our two presenters again. Very insightful, and I think it sparked a lot of conversations, which we didn't answer all today, but obviously there's a lot of questions that we're still exploring and gathering information for, and just want to encourage people to continue to look to PAVE and get involved with them, as they now have a chapter in Canada, and we look forward to the results of your survey and your education campaign. And thank you again, and thank you everyone for participating today.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It was just great to be with you.
Take care.